But when you think about it from a how can you publish so that that happens is one, but the other is what you described based on lifestyle changes, based on being where somebody is, it can really change your approach.
So as marketers in general, we're trying to get more people to visit or whatever your goal is. What voice does so traffic's your Y, the number of articles or pieces of content are your X axis, and now you have a Z or a Z that comes out and that's context. Because the difference once you add voice, there are two things that happen. One, I'm using a device and you can tell what kind of device. And one of the, if you can gather, as long as you have the right kind of training, you can tell what kind of device, which gives you where I am, what time I'm doing it, how I'm using it. It gives you a lot of information that provides context, which you didn't have before. Additionally, I just want to make a point that voice carries more information than any other kind of content. So that changes it. You now have context, right? And people use voice across the range. The two big places people use voice in their home, no surprise, and in their car. And a lot of cars have various voice devices, or you can use your phone. So that gives you way more information. So search, right? There's very little search that goes someplace, right? It's not just the Google. It could be YouTube. And when we think about, most people think about search, they think about a search engine. It's not just a search engine. And it's not just YouTube, which is the second biggest search engine. It's anything I want to search. I could be on your site and want to do search. That is really huge change. That's why I say you have to start thinking differently. I look at content as being what starts happening when you start thinking about voice is that you need information across your entire organization. And from when you say content is not just, I wrote a wonderful article or a great white paper or amazing video. It's that information, it's product information, it's cost information, it's sales information, and it has to be able to be gotten and combined. So I call those kind of Lego blocks to answer that question, which kind of changes and expands the role of an SEO, in my opinion.
Is that how you feel? Like, is that why you tend to say we're in 2.5 or 2.4?
Okay. So actually, back in 2019, after I saw what was happening with the early days of marketing AI and voice, I really saw that there was a shift happening. I called it the seismic shift. I called it a seismic marketing shift. And I looked at it as having three factors, which help you understand. And I'm talking about this not because because this really explains Web 2.0, 2.5. What it says is that we've got deep content saturation. It's a huge problem for anybody who's, whether you're a search, you're doing content strategy, whatever you're doing, it gets harder and harder for your stuff to get through. It's not a matter of quantity, it's a matter of quality. And when I look at content, I think of it in three different buckets. One is your foundational content. Two are your FQ questions. And three is what I call consistent content. It could be I do a newsletter. It could be a podcast. It could be a video. It could be whatever works for your business, either once a week or once every 2 weeks, because you need to build a content consumption habit. And ideally, you're looking at three different kinds of content. This is your pillar, your foundational content is your points in the sand. Your FAQ talks about everything you need to know about your products and answer every question. And possibly at the head of that, we're now looking at more landscape structure to content. You want those to be as high up as possible so they're easy to find by search engines. And lastly, you've got this consistent content that comes out weekly or every other week that that builds a relationship. You do not want to keep going promotion. If you do that, that in email terms is called burning through your list. And every time you send out a promotion, you're going to lose people. And in today's world, it's harder to get. So that's how I look at the content. So we had going back to the seismic shift. So first is content shift. So one of the ways of breaking through is to build this list and have a relationship with your customer. Two is how that information, you get that information, and therefore they're going to pay attention. So if you send once in a while, you send a promotion, they pay attention, or they think of you when they go to buy. So here's another one. I don't believe I know this might sound like heresy, but 2019, it's not Heidi Cohen, it's Brett Adamson of Gartner. He's really well known in the B2B space. Gartner interviewed, instead of interviewing marketers, they interviewed buyers. And they found that there was no longer a buyer's journey, that people had in the B2B space. They have six processes and a group of 6 to 10 people that have to go through those processes. And if they get conflicting information, it increases each time they have a conflict, it increases their buying process by about 2 months. Pretty dangerous. And guess what? The most common type of conflict is the content created by two different companies. What happened during and post COVID is that people have changed how they do things. It's not just, and been a blurring of B2B, especially with people working from home. There's been a blurring between B2B and B2C buying. I think that they've often been the same because you're always selling, as Brian Kramer would say, it's human to human. So there's a blurring. I do not believe that the funnel, the buying trip exists in its old format. There are still stages customers go through, but they never went through them in a straight line anyhow. They bounced around. So there's still I have an initial need, I do evaluation, I purchase, I onboard, which is a part that many businesses forget. I want to work to retain those customers, and then I want them to buy again and keep buying. Okay. So the McKinsey loyalty loop says you can't call someone a customer until they bought a second time. So I consider onboarding where the battle for the customers won or lost. That is actually where voice comes in really handy, because some of the things you need to onboard customers are exactly the content you created already to win them over.
As you say, where people want their information, how can they get it, making sure you meet them where they are with that content. I've seen so many situations where end users aren't consuming any of the content.
Here's the other part, is that the companies may use onboarding as an excuse to sell other services. What I would also look at is, because this is something that particularly many marketers overlook, particularly small businesses and marketers, is branding. Actually, it is the least expensive thing you can do. When they talk about content, there's two kinds of brand voice, right? Once you start adding voice and audio, you've got two types of brand voice, right? You've got how you talk, where you're from. Nobody's going to make a mistake about me. I'm a New Yorker. I talk fast. I use my hands a lot. Right? No one's going to mistake me for being from South Carolina. But the fact of the matter is, you also want to know who's going to give you the audio content, who's doing the podcast, how do they represent it, who is on your advertising, who's in your videos, who reads your articles. Is it just the machine? You can have a machine read your articles. Matter of fact, if you have a mobile app, it works with voice. It's just the voice of your telephone. So it's Siri or Google or Samsung or Bixby, which is Samsung, right? These things people don't think about. What voice are you going to do? How does that relate to your brand? What do I say at the beginning? Maybe after we have this conversation, you may change how you do the opening to your webinars. These webinars can be broken up, right? There are questions. You could have taken my pieces and say, this is what we're going to do to answer that question. So I'm not advocating that you need to do voice everywhere or all the time. All right. Every business is already doing voice. They have phones. They have web chat. They are now using video conferencing like we are. And they have IVRs, which are now IVAs. They're collecting lots of information and they're doing it. So I'm saying give people options. You don't know if your audience wants to use voice if you don't offer it.
You spoke about the seismic shift, one of those things being voice first. Approaches to building that collection of data, or that frequently asked questions and answering, all of that goes into that actionable strategy. So the first question was, why, Heidi, why do you think voice chatbot are one is the other? And then second, does that connect to voice first as a concept?
So first of all, chatbots have been out for a while. Drift, they have amazing content. Their uses of their chatbots actually brought down gating. They are a form of voice because it's conversation. That's why they're a form of voice. It's an interaction. You want to know what the major questions are, the easy answers on each page of your website where you're going to collect the information. And at a minimum, you want them to sign up or talk to where Drift made their major input is that they were able to speed up sales. They got rid of all of their forms. They increased the amount of traffic, and they were able to not only increase sales and decrease time to sale. So that's web chat has to be done well. That also should involve not just your marketing department, your content department, but someone who understands conversation, or such as a linguist or a conversational AI person. And that's not my area of expertise. The second part is, do I believe that everything is voice first? No, I don't believe you have to have everything be voice first. I think you have to be cognizant of it, because voice gets asked. First of all, it's easy in certain circumstances, right? If someone's in your store and there's a kiosk there that they go up to, and instead of typing in, they want to talk to it, let them talk to it. And what kind of questions they're going to ask? Where is blah, blah, blah? Do you have this in stock? These are really not complicated questions. The key there is have people sit in a customer service, hear the questions. Your customer service agents know what the most questions are, right? Like around ordering, the biggest problem is that between order and receipt, what happened to my package? Really simple. You can do tracking. That's where that comes from.
And so thinking about is not when you're saying voice, it may be literally voice. It may also be other formats of the customer's voice that you're maybe not being very attentive to. And like you said, the customer being on a call with a customer service agent, if you translate that call into text intelligence, you were being
Yeah,
thoughtful.
here's the thing about those service calls, and I've sat in customer service centers. I've seen I've been responsible for products worth a budget of sales of 90 plus $1 million. You know, how they answer the questions, what they're supposed to say, what they do say, how you deal with people, you really need to make everybody go through every job, which I believe is what happens at Zappos. But when you're talking about it, first of all, most people don't have voice. You don't know what someone's going to ask. So do this simple. Here's the thing. Everybody here can do really simple stuff, and you don't have to worry about how hard or difficult it is. You can talk to your phone or your computer and read all of your articles. Jay Baer, who's a well-known marketer, content marketer, he started doing this back in 2019, and then they stopped. All right. What his editor told me is that having the voice on there kept people on their site longer, because you're listening to the whole thing. You're not reading. You're going to take longer, even if you do it at a higher speed. But there are people who want to listen because they're just walking around. They want to save it so they can do it when they're doing something else. That goes back to how people have changed, right? You can't do this in a vacuum. You can't just do it by collecting data on your business. You have to actually understand how people have changed, right? With work from home, work butts up against personal life. There's no more drive time that they're going to do it. They're going to put it somewhere else. The easiest thing, the biggest thing about voice and audio, it is the only one where you have dual consumption, right? So I'm doing something that I don't need to think about. I'm doing the laundry, I'm driving, whatever, where I can't talk and think about it, but I can take the information in. That's easy. I'm cooking dinner. I'm doing menial things where I have to get them done. I can listen and read your article, see what happens. You don't have to do everything. What has to change is I don't need a whole SEO team. I don't need a whole SEO team to decide where everything should go.